All right, so Nintendo's latest business updates just hit the internet early this morning, and at the time of filming, there is still a pending Q&A session with investors that has yet to take place. And while we have some already published comments from Mr. Furukawa himself reconfirming the plans for Switch 2 to be revealed within this fiscal year, so nobody has to worry about delays whenever it comes to the console being revealed, 2024 is looking like it's probably come and gone in terms of its window for being revealed, but we are still just months away from finally seeing this console at the end of the day. And there were also a number of different interesting Nintendo business updates that were provided surrounding them revising their forecast. As we've talked about multiple times on the channel, 13.5 million seemed like a lot. It's going to be a lot, and Nintendo actually adjusted that down. And we have some interesting software sales titles for games that we did not know about so far, such as Echoes of Wisdom, Paper Mario Thousand Year Door, amongst many others. And wouldn't you know it, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is a sales juggernaut that will never die. So we're going to get on the same page with everything that was discussed. Before we do, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on your bell notification to join Sunbro Nation if you're new here. And with that, I want to hop straight over to first a look at the direct document that Nintendo published, and then an interesting VGC article that does actually outline exactly what Furukawa said surrounding the reconfirmation to reveal Switch 2 within this fiscal year. So the slide that kind of kicks us off and shows the most details in terms of what was highlighted at this latest investors briefing is the following. So first off, you have some year-on-year comparisons, which you can see is down total of 31% in terms of what Nintendo sold this year when it comes to total Switch unit sales compared to what they did last year, although there's some specific reasons for that, and we'll dive into those in a second. But 6.84 million is what they sold in the last fiscal year up to this point, and we are currently at 4.72 as the end of this fiscal year. And here's a breakdown of the different Switch models that were sold. There is a slight uptick in Switch Lite, which you would expect to see, mainly because of Echoes of Wisdom and the special edition unit that came with that in terms of the special edition Hyrule Switch Lite that they released with the game. But on the note of Echoes of Wisdom, and I want to highlight this came out at the very tail end of the reporting in terms of these unit sales numbers that we're looking at. So really just a few days on the market, and this game has sold 2.58 million copies, which is a massive success because when you compare it to a game like Link's Awakening, it was nowhere near that number. Even within its first full month on the market, that game went on to sell in the 6 to 7 million range. I think it's inching up close to the 7 million, if not already there at this point in time. And we are already at 2.58 for Echoes of Wisdom. So definitely a big highlight and big success for Nintendo when it comes to putting out a fresh top-down 2D Zelda experience. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe has to be highlighted because it's absolutely insane that as old as this game is, legitimately over 10 years old at the time that you're watching this video, because this was originally a Wii U game, it continues to sell, and at 2.31 million units so far in Nintendo's current financial results. So astronomical numbers. Obviously, Nintendo never anticipated this to be the massive smash hit success that it's become. It's by far and away the most successful selling Nintendo Switch game, period. And it's smart that Nintendo doubled down and gave some second life into that particular title, because with that booster course pass, it does seem to be drumming up additional buys, because even though we're going to see this game packed in as Nintendo's holiday title, it's still performing this without those holiday numbers necessarily being factored into this yet. So that's, again, kind of a crazy statement, but Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is the sales juggernaut that never dies for Nintendo. Paper Mario Thousand Year Door also performing solid. It's 1.94 million units, and Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, a pretty simple 3DS port / remaster project, 1.57 million. So Nintendo's probably decently happy with the software here, and you have to keep in mind we are in the 8th year of sales. It's technically 7.5 full years, but the fiscal year that Nintendo's reporting on, it is the 8th year of hardware sales for the Nintendo Switch. So considering even though they are significantly down from year on year, they are still performing way higher than you would expect a company to do at this point in the life cycle, which is probably why we're waiting so long for Nintendo Switch 2 news, which we'll get to in a minute. But unit sales for the entire Nintendo Switch family of systems decreased by 31% year on year to 4.72 million units. Unit sales of software decreased 27.6 year on year to 70.28 million units. Now, this is the reason why. Unit sales of both Hardware and software were extremely high for the first half of the previous fiscal year when the new I've been saying new Super Mario Bros. For so long, when the Super Mario Bros. Movie energized our dedicated video game platform business and The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom was released, together with specially designed hardware based on that title. There was no such special factors in the first half of this fiscal year, and with the Nintendo Switch now in its 8th year since launch, unit sales of both hardware and software have decreased significantly year on year. Due to factors such as the launch of the Nintendo Switch Lite Hyrule Edition in September, as well as releases of the hardware bundled with software titles, unit sales for the Nintendo Switch family of systems during the second quarter was higher than that of the first quarter. Sales grew steadily for new titles such as Paper Mario Thousand Year Door, Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, and The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom were released this fiscal year. Sales were also steady for evergreen titles released in previous fiscal years and for titles released by other software publishers. As a result, the number of million sellers titles this fiscal year reached 9 titles. So again, not all bad. It is definitely a decline because we're just at the end of when people really care about the Nintendo Switch. This is kind of a quick digital outlook in terms of what percentages went digital versus physical, as well as it factors in Nintendo Switch Online. So the slide can be a little bit misleading because it's just kind of technically all purchases, which include Nintendo Switch Online. But that's kind of some of the interesting points, and really this is the main takeaway from their financial results on this slide right here. However, there is a couple more things to get to. So first, your updated software unit totals, now that we have that data, and Mario Kart 8 Deluxe climbing up to 64.27 million copies is absolutely astronomical. That's crazy. You know, it really is for that, considering that game is just sitting on a shelf, continuing to sell, and they've already got the DLC out. It's been wrapped up literally since the end of 2023, and we're still seeing it climb the charts. 46 million for Animal Crossing, crazy. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, 35 million. Breath of the Wild, 32.29. Now, you can see the other numbers on screen, but I would like to highlight that Tears of the Kingdom, while it's continuing to sell some, it is not by any stretch of the imagination following that same kind of trajectory that we really saw from Breath of the Wild. So the idea being, it's a very similar game to Breath of the Wild, and if Zelda fans checked out Breath of the Wild and weren't necessarily thrilled with it, they probably didn't go rush out to buy Tears of the Kingdom. Now, 21 million units is still on Nintendo's top 10 list, and that's awesome, and it's honestly insane to say just how stacked out this top 10 list is. Like, you have to go to 17.7 million units just to get onto that top 10 list. But Tears of the Kingdom probably will not have the type of legs that we saw for Breath of the Wild to get all the way up to the 32 million range. I would expect it to cap out somewhere around the 23, 24 million units range, but you do have to factor in that when we talk about next-gen Nintendo hardware, there's going to be a certain percentage of people that maybe never picked it up, that only buy a Switch 2, and then they play that game via backwards compatibility. So maybe that 25 million plus is a possibility over the long term, but Nintendo's strategy with their evergreen software is obviously working. I read somewhere a title that Pokemon on the Switch, just the franchise as a whole, have now sold over 100 million units combined between all releases. So again, outstanding numbers, just other than, you know, some games didn't continue to sell as much as we maybe thought that they would have. And then, you know, we do have to have that conversation as well, as like we were mentioning back on this previous slide, where Nintendo kind of explains literally when they had the Super Mario Bros. Movie, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, and Super Mario Bros. Wonder all released in their last fiscal year, these numbers are just down, and the stock is reacting accordingly, as it's down like 4% since they've published these results. Now, hardware, 146 million 04 units total, so that's where they're at in the Switch hardware now that these numbers have been updated. We are still inching behind that 3DS, or DS rather, number, family of systems, which hit 154 million, but Nintendo will seemingly get there without a problem, especially past the holiday season and whenever we close out the fiscal year. The question is can it go all the way to almost hit that 160 million units range that we really needed to hit for it to officially be the king, with no questions asked about it being the best-selling video game console in history, period. It has to knock off that 155 to 160 range, depending on who you ask, over at the PlayStation camp, for basically taking the crown from the PS2. Now, the last thing I want to kind of go through and, you know, update you guys on, which it really is just a reconfirmation that Furukawa's original statement, which is that they will release the Nintendo Switch, or reveal it rather, within the current fiscal year, is still the plan. So if you were worried about a delay or we're not going to learn about this console even past March 31st of 2025, that's not the case here. And you can see this following article from VGC, which reads, Nintendo's president says no change in Switch 2 announce plan. The company intends to announce its next console before April, Furukawa reiterates. So President Shintaro Furukawa made the comments during an online press conference on Tuesday following the publication of Nintendo's latest earning results, but the executive did not add any additional details. Furukawa's first confirmed plans to announce its Switch successor in May, when Furukawa said, "We will make an announcement about the successor to the Nintendo Switch within this fiscal year." In its latest earnings report for the 3 months ended September 30th, the Switch firm said that it had lowered its Switch hardware sales forecast to 12.5 million for the fiscal year, down from 13.5 million, and lowered its operating profit outlook by 10%, or 360 billion yen, or 2.4 billion in terms of total US dollars. So for a platform that is in its 8th year on the market, both hardware and software enjoy stable demand at brisk sales, Nintendo President Shintaro Furukawa said during the publication of the results. But sales so far fell short from our original projections. Taking into consideration their sales in the first half, we have revised our forecast for both hardware and software, and that led to the earnings revision. Nintendo's share price declined by nearly 4% following the publication results, and Toyo Securities analyst Hideki Yasuda told Reuters that Nintendo should remain under pressure as it's now unlikely to announce its new console before the end of the calendar year. Making an announcement this year has gotten quite difficult. You would not want to divert attention to an upcoming console in the middle of the critical year-end shopping season, Yasuda said. So then, we do have this other report that originally came out from Chris Dring, which is now seeming to be more true. So according to a report, developers have reportedly been briefed not to expect Nintendo's next console to launch before April of 2025. And if we don't see it this year, which I am now on Team 2025 officially, I mean, there's a small chance that Furukawa could drop some kind of bombshell, loose timeline in terms of when they're planning to announce the console in the investor Q&A. But I honestly thought if there was a shot that we would see him essentially confirm the timeline, or a loose timeline of when they're going to come to market with this thing, it would have been in this online press release where he reconfirmed the plans to reveal it within this fiscal year. So since that didn't happen, an early 2025 reveal is now the best case scenario. And then the launch timing from that, the best case now becomes something like a April, May, or June. And I'm really thinking early summer is probably the best and earliest we would see the console launch. If not, it could very well fall into that fall 2025 category. Maybe not holiday season, like literally October, November range, but rather like September seems like maybe a logical month to do the console launch, even something like in August. But if they don't reveal this thing until January, February, or March, well, at that point, it's pretty clear that we're going to be going another Switch year with the exact same hardware. Metroid Prime 4 is going to come out just for the Switch. Pokemon Legends EA is going to come out just for the Switch, which I think that one's going to be a Switch 1 game only anyway. But Metroid Prime 4, I had that thought that maybe they would launch it on both platforms at the same time. Nintendo could actually go realistically almost an entire another year from here with their current hardware, which I hope is not the case. But again, this was kind of our last shot for Team 2024. So it's fun to try to predict Nintendo and try to figure out when they will do things. But at the end of the day, they're just kind of riding out the sales of the Switch console longer than many anticipated. And while they are going way down year over year and their stock's taking a hit because of it, they're also not completely falling off a cliff. I mean, providing we don't see them hit just terrible numbers over the holiday season, if they get anywhere near their 12.5 million in terms of total unit sales in the 8th year of sales for the console, that's still an insane number to hit. So I guess Nintendo wanted to ride things out a little bit longer. The risk then becomes if they've been planning the same kind of level of power for the hardware on their next gen console, is that hardware dated by the time we even have it in our hands? I mean, it's a realistic question you have to ask if Nintendo just waits too long to actually launch this thing. But the brand is still very strong overall. The software sales are still performing in terms of the evergreen titles. They just don't have any big, massive, heavy hitter stuff. Besides, maybe you could make the argument for Super Mario Party Jamboree that's going to move the needle in terms of software sales over the holiday season. But there's nothing that's going to force a bunch of people to go out and buy this console in the 8th year. It's a must-buy product. There's definitely going to be a continued decline until Nintendo reveals their next console and gives us kind of the marketing plans on it. But that's looking like January at the earliest, and it could indeed be February or past that, but I'm hoping by the end of January we know something, so that way when it comes season for the February Nintendo Direct, we can actually get a look at Switch 2 games and we don't have all these third-party publishers legitimately just revealing that they have a game in the works for Nintendo's next-gen console and they can't even show a logo or a name. So if anything big happens from the evening time investor briefing, we'll either do a breaking news return to video, so subscribe for that. We'll either do that if there is something big there. If not, we will probably discuss anything that was meaningfully asked and mentioned, any kind of new information in tomorrow's video. But let me know in the comments down below what you think about all of this now that we have yet another round of financial updates from Nintendo. And do you think that yes, indeed, 2025 is the earliest we could see a reveal? I'm seeing some talk about the Game Awards online. I don't think Nintendo's showing up there to reveal their console, but is there any hope left in 2024, or are you fully on team 2025 now? And are you thinking that it will be a middle of the year launch, maybe still as soon as something like April or May? Or do you now think that the earliest we can maybe see this console is for sure in the second half of the year, and even potentially as late as September or October time in 2025? So make sure you share all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below before you leave, regardless if we agree or disagree. Also make sure you like, subscribe, turn your notification bell. And with that, I've been Sunbro, you've been Nation. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.